ever just get dressed because it's cold outside and you put on your favorite monkey hat, and then you get this feeling of like, who's gonna call me the N word today? Hi, I'm Ishtar and this is Rain! Just kidding. You may have noticed I actually had to change my intro and my channel name. Apparently, the name Rainboba was already taken by not one, but two other channels, one of which had over 200 subscribers. But of course, as soon as I worked tirelessly to rebrand my channel, to like change things up, I, searched up the name Rainboba again, and the channel with over 200 subscribers deleted everything except for one video, so. Today we're actually discussing the dark side of study abroad. As some of you may know, I spent the majority of 2019 traveling. I spent my summer in a Buddhist monastery in rural China, and then I spent my fall semester actually in Nagasaki, Japan. Although there were definitely dark sides to living in the monastery for a month. I'm actually going to be talking more about my trip to Japan, surprisingly enough. Please keep in mind that my list is completely subjective. Like, every study abroad experience is unique, every location is different, and some things that may have been difficult or challenging for me may not be difficult or challenging for others. The purpose of this video isn't to turn people off from studying abroad, but to give a well-rounded perspective. Because, you hear a lot of the overwhelming positives of studying abroad, but there are some negatives that should be considered as well. Hopefully I can give you some insight on potential obstacles you may run into on your way to becoming a global citizen.
If you're wondering, yes, I am a weeb. I love learning languages though, and learning about new cultures more than I like anime and manga. So I'm not going for the anime, it's just a perk.
She's lying! Oh my god. The saddest part of that video is knowing that past me fully believed her own BS. Like, come on, I was an anime fan for years, and it just, there definitely was a part of me that wanted to go to Japan because I had seen amazing shows like Naruto or Soul Eater or in High School Host Club, there's always that bit of hoping or that fantastical aspiration that if you go to the place, right, where these amazing stories took place, like maybe you'll get an amazing story of your own. Who knows, maybe you will end up with magic superpowers or, have a cute little slice of life romance. So a big part of me was definitely going to see what Japan was really like, I had spent quite a bit of time researching Japan ahead of time. So I was quite familiar going into the environment of like what real Japan was supposed to look like. To save you some time, right, the parts of Japan most similar to anime, at least in my experience, were the bathrooms, oddly enough, the onsen, and the tori, right? So besides the general landscapes, if you're going to Japan because you want to see middle schoolers with magic powers or talking cats or other things, I would advise you to save your time and to save your money, right? Like, use it on a Crunchyroll subscription. You're gonna get way closer to that aspirational like anime land through actual anime than you will by being in Japan. Also, if you're under this impression that like everyone in Japan is an anime fan or like anime is everywhere, you're gonna get to watch it all the time, that's just not true. Like, I lived there with a host family, and both of my host parents were anime fans, and we rarely watch anime in the house. Like, I rarely saw anime just on TV. We spent most of our time watching Disney movies that were dubbed in Japanese rather than watching actual anime. And part of that could be because I had two toddler-aged host siblings. That could be a factor, but even when I went to other people's houses or I met other Japanese people, like anime it wasn't something that came up very often in conversation. I don't know if that's because I was in Nagasaki, maybe it's a different experience in like Tokyo or Kyoto, but in general, I saw more anime merchandise than I saw actual anime. So, but yes, I can confirm that for Nagasaki, there wasn't much of a weeb vibe. So technically this isn't like a dark side of studying abroad in Japan, but it could be potentially very disappointing to people who want to go to Japan for that reason. You know, I'd rather you hear it from a YouTube video for free than after you spend a couple of $1,000s and a plane ticket, you know, trying to get to this place. But yes, if you're going because you really do like Japanese culture, really do like the Japanese language, and you know, if you really want to get anime merch, like, Japan is definitely the place for you. I cannot tell you the amount of anxiety I've had while traveling abroad in general. I am directionally challenged to, like, just 100%. When I was in Japan, they didn't have Google Maps, but I was always using some form of map. And even then, I was still constantly getting lost. Like, it was a real wake-up call when I had to travel to a different country where all of the characters are basically a giant guessing game. You know, you never know how one character is written, and you don't even know if you're gonna know the characters that are showing up on the street signs. And at the time I went to Japan, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that Google and Japan were having some sort of conflict, so I couldn't use Google Maps at all, and it was really difficult just trying to get around. And even if I had someone, like, say, draw me a map, or if I did look up where I was supposed to go, it was difficult for me to make sure I was even taking the bus in the right direction, because you could take a bus going uptown or you could take a bus going downtown, but I never knew where I was going. That could just be a me thing, but you know, if there are other people who struggle with directions, like, keep that in mind. If you're gonna study in a country where they speak a foreign language, like, make sure that you really study and you really drill the phrases and the questions and the answers that have to do with navigation. Like, I thought having a picture dictionary would be enough for, like, the first few weeks, just to, like, to get myself acquainted. And after my first day of, like, going to school by myself, you know, I didn't want to be a burden. I wanted to, like, be independent. I wanted to, you know, make sure that my host parents didn't extend themselves more than they had to. So I thought it was going to be a brilliant idea to go home from school all by myself. You know, my host mom, she had drawn me, like, the cutest little map, and I wish I knew where it was, but I don't. Yeah, and I was like, you know what, this is enough. I can do it. I believe in myself. I can definitely get from school back to my home. And just to clarify, right? Where I lived in relation to my school, I could literally walk to school from my house. Like, it wasn't super far away, but there were a lot of confusing blocks and, like, streets and stuff, at least for my first time being there, so I had no idea how to get there and back. But I thought I could do it, because I thought I remembered how to get there from the car ride. And, bro, that just wasn't true. Like, I don't know why I do this. I don't know why I do things like this. But, you know, I ended up lost at a 7-Eleven, long story short, and I pulled out my little picture dictionary, and I said, you know, I read off the question, like, hey, I'm lost, can you please help me get to where I need to go? And she answered back to me in Japanese, and I realized I had not planned that far. I really did not think that through. Like, whoo, I know the question, I know how to say I'm lost, I'm gonna easily know how to get back. I didn't understand the answer. I realized, you know, even before I asked the lady at 7-Eleven to help me, I realized, like, because I wanted to call my host dad and, like, let him know that I was lost, I couldn't even describe where I was. I couldn't tell him. I was like, there's no point in me calling my host parents because I don't even know how to tell them where I am in Japanese, so it will solve nothing. Luckily, the lady at 7-Eleven knew how to speak Japanese, so when she called my host parents, like, she knew how to communicate, like, hey, there's this random black girl in my shop. Is she yours? Please help her. And she managed to give me the instructions to get back home. I almost constantly got lost, and I managed to solve this problem by either taking taxis, right, because they know exactly where to go. I do not recommend this option in any way, shape, or form because it's extremely expensive. Like, I spent a ridiculous amount of money on taxis just because, you know, it was less anxiety inducing for me to know that the taxi knew 100% where it was going versus taking the bus and potentially like being late to something, or ending up on the wrong side of town. Like, you know, I felt comfortable spending like the $10 or $20 here or there to like get where I need to go. But if you know, if you're tight on money, or if you want to live more economically friendly, fiscally responsible, I don't know, like just you know, take the bus, really learn which direction certain landmarks and places of the city are, and you'll be okay. I also like would always triple check my destination and how to get there with my host family. You know, once I was a little more comfortable with the language, I could be like, hey, I'm trying to go here. Like, which way do you recommend I go, or what like type of transportation do you recommend? Or, you know, sometimes they would even offer to like drive me where I needed to go, which was really nice, really generous. But like, you know, don't expect that of your host parents. You should never expect them to just like drive you around everywhere. They're not your chauffeurs. I would also deal with this by just begging my friends to like check the route and make sure to send me like the right route so I could get where I wanted to go. So if you're not comfortable with taking public transportation or navigating a city easily, this is something that could definitely cause you more stress than you anticipate, just on the day-to-day side of things. You know, it sucked because of my directional challenges. I was limited to only going places where I felt, you know, comfortable that I could go and return in a timely manner, in a relatively straightforward manner, or I was limited to visiting locations like around my neighborhood or anywhere close to like where I lived and school. And if I did want to go somewhere in a completely different location, I would almost always travel in a group, like with a group of friends, or maybe with other classmates who were doing something similar that day. So just, you know, really utilize the people around you if you can to help you out. Obviously, if you're in a country where you can easily read signs or easily like figure out where or what something is called, maybe like, you know, if you're in a Spanish-speaking country or a French-speaking country, you probably won't need to be as reliant on other people in order to get around, or as reliant on external things. But for the case of places like China or Japan or anywhere else where the written language is really difficult to like comprehend or to like confidently know, I would definitely suggest buying a city map, talking to your friends, getting them to help you out. Even if you're annoying them, like, just do it. Because it's better to have someone be like a little annoyed than for you to end up in the middle of nowhere at night and not know how to communicate someone, or, you know, or worse, like the public transportation is just not running anymore at that time period at all. I was lucky in that my closest friends on the program just happened to live like down the block or so from me. So if we wanted to go somewhere or if we had to return somewhere, I knew there was always someone who lived in my general direction that I could like lean on for that support. But I understand that this may not always be the case, especially like if you haven't quite made friends yet, or you're not super acquainted with the people in your program just yet. But yeah, just take the help and don't try to force yourself to be overly independent too quickly, because, you know, even if you think you're avoiding problems or avoiding dragging people into unnecessary things, you could just end up causing more trouble than necessary, than just taking the help in the first place. People, yay! No matter where you go, right? No matter where you go, there will be people. And sometimes you will get along with the people in a certain environment. Other times, you might not. And I wanted to put this on the dark side just because the people you interact with, it definitely can impact your trip. Like, don't underestimate how much a community can influence your trip abroad. Like, that's who you're gonna be probably spending most of your time with. There's barely anything you cannot accomplish without other people being involved. You could be lucky and meet some of your best friends for life on your trip, or you could not really click with anyone, or worse, you could end up hating. these are all realistic possibilities. Like, these are things that can actually happen. I was lucky in that I managed to make a group of really kind, amazing, like, thoughtful friends, and they were very supportive, very helpful. You know, I could talk to them if something was going wrong, or they could talk to me if they were struggling with something. But there were also people that I didn't get along with very well in my program. That's just life. I would recommend going on a program with more people rather than fewer people, just so you increase your options, right? Or increase your chances of finding someone that you do click with or get along with. Or if something happens to not work out with another group of people, like, you still have people you could potentially get to know. So that's just my recommendation. If you were on a smaller program, it would be a lot more difficult to find people that you work with well. But you can also look outside of your program to make connections. It's just harder depending on where you are, because if you don't speak the language very well, the learning curve is going to be a lot steeper trying to make friends if you don't speak common language than if you do. Luckily in Japan, English is like super common. Everyone knows at least some bit of English, right? To a degree. Like, someone's gonna know English for you. But you could be in an area where that's not the case. So just, you know, really think about that ahead of time. The important thing is to remain as diplomatic as possible. If, you know, a conflict or a situation arises that you can't manage on your own, like, for example, if you don't get along with your host family, or if, you know, you're having issues with other members in your program, like, don't be afraid to reach out to the people who are facilitating or running the program. You know, they have support systems in place to help resolve conflicts or to, you know, smooth over certain situations. Like, don't be afraid to visit the school therapist or guidance counselor or whatever, because you're doing a difficult thing. You're going from one country, one place with people and things you do know, and going all the way over to a new place with a new group of people that you don't know very well, you know? So just take the extra help. It's there for you. Like, there's nothing wrong with leaning on other people a bit more. You're gonna meet all types of people in your program, not just the people who are living in the host country, but the people, like, the types of teachers that you'll meet, the peers that you might have, your roommates, your host parents, you know, like, you're interacting with a bunch of different people. And even the people from your own country, it's gonna be a diverse selection of people. Like, I think I was the only one from Florida on my trip, or at least, you know, like, everyone's from different parts of the country, and there are cultural differences just between, like, Florida and, say, Washington State. So you're just gonna meet different people. And studying abroad, it's a great way to learn how to deal with diverse personalities and learn how to adapt to certain situations, because you're gonna need the skill of knowing how to deal with people who have perspectives that are vastly different from your own. Do you ever just get dressed because it's cold outside and you put on your favorite monkey hat, and then you get this feeling of like, who's gonna call me the N-word today? Yeah, that doesn't happen to me very often either, but that definitely happened to me during, I think it was around December of my time in Japan. Unfortunately, my inkling was correct. I ended up visiting my friend's host family for the first time, and let's just say it didn't go as well as it could have. My friend's host dad was plastered beyond belief, and you know, it's always a weird situation to meet someone who's like just completely gone. Like, they're just completely drunk. And he, you know, he seemed nice, he seemed friendly at first, and then we started asking more about like personal questions, and I had the feeling. It started off with, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, America. And then he's like, which part of America? I'm like, you know, Florida, wherever it is I'm from. He's like, yeah, but where are you really from? And you're like, oh God, I already know where this is going. But I didn't know I didn't know where it was going, but I knew where it was going, you know? And, you know, he just had all these questions, all these curiosities about my life or my hair, normal stuff. And then, for whatever reason, the N-word came up in conversation, and when I tell you this man said the N-word over 20 times, even though I explained patiently and repeatedly that it wasn't appropriate to say, or, you know, you can end up making people uncomfortable, and you wanted to argue, you know, that like, oh, but I'm Japanese, so if I say, it doesn't matter how many times I say, because it doesn't mean anything historically, because we didn't have to deal with in Japan. You know, it kept going, and you thought you think it's gonna stop, and it just doesn't stop. Over 20 times. I wish I was exaggerating. I'm really not. Yeah, so wherever you go, if you're a black person especially, racism is just a thing. It's just a thing. It doesn't matter where you are. It will catch up to you, and it will find you, and it will annoy you. To clarify, I was the only black person in my program. And therefore, I was the only black person in the entire school for over 3 months. So there were certain things I did have to encounter as a black person that you just wouldn't encounter otherwise, right? There wasn't really anyone on my program where I could ever be like, yo, you know, this crazy racist thing just happened to me, because most of the program members were white. And if they weren't white, they were some type of like mixed Asian. For my friends, you know, as much as I did try to like smooth things over, to be like, oh, he doesn't know what he's saying, or he doesn't know what he's doing, you know, I had to explain to them that I understand that the N-word is just a word. It's an offensive word, yes, but at the end of the day, it is just a word. And, but that's not what bothers me. What bothers me is the disrespect behind it. So in this case, right, with that host dad, I explained to him numerous times, right, that just saying it was offensive, or just saying it, you know, no matter what his intentions were, like, it just wasn't appropriate. I explained that it made me uncomfortable. He continued to say, he continued to do it. So was I annoyed that he said the N-word? Of course. But it was more of the fact that, you know, I explicitly stated that there was a discomfort there. And he wanted to use it, which is why he continued to use it. And that's what bothers me, the disrespect. And depending on your race, or depending on your ethnicity, or the types of things you encounter, you will have people saying insensitive things to you. It's gonna happen. You know, don't listen to the people who are like, oh, like, don't get so sensitive about it, blah, 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 blah. No. You have every right to be upset if you feel disrespected. You have every right to feel upset. Like, no one can tell you how to respond to that. If it's something that makes you uncomfortable, or something that's frustrating for you to deal with, you know, you don't have to minimize or dismiss your feelings just because other people don't understand the gravity of it. Like, if someone calls you a name that you don't like, or if someone says something you don't like, you have the right to set your boundaries in that way. You have the right to, you know, talk to them and communicate with them. Now, should you be angry about it long term? Probably not. It's just a waste of time. But, you know, if in the moment you are feeling something about it, you are allowed to do that. Don't let other people determine how you respond to certain situations. There was Japanese racism, and there was American racism as well. As I mentioned, I was the only black person on my program, and some of the racist or off-color remarks or commentary came from people within the study abroad program itself. Most notably from one of my professors. We were learning about some of the immigrants who came to Japan, or some of the traders who came to Japan, and, you know, usually you can already tell when a situation or when a conversation is going to go in a maybe not so favorable direction. And he was asking us, what things did we notice on this boat in this particular painting? Now, this one girl, she's like, oh, those men seem to be wearing, like, green masks. And my first thought is like, okay, she probably has color blindness, like undiagnosed color blindness or something, because they were clearly black people on this ship. Like, they were clearly just black. Like, I don't know what green mask she was talking about, but that's not what, like, shook me. What shook me was that my professor, this particular professor said, yeah, there are some coloreds on there. Sir. Like, and the most uncomfortable part about this was, you know, I tried to do the black people look. It's It's something that happens when someone who isn't black says something that's questionable and or concerning, and you automatically make eye contact with the other black person in your class, and you both just are kind of like, what the heck, you know? Well, I couldn't do that because I was the only black person in the room. Everyone else was just like, la 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 la. Like, they didn't understand that, like, he just said something incredibly inappropriate. And, you know, at first, because no one seemed to react, I was like, maybe I'm tripping, you know? Maybe I'm tripping. But then I thought about it and I was like, no, like, I have never heard anyone in modern times refer to black people as colored. Like, it hasn't happened. So I don't know. Just no. Just don't, right? So just, yeah, and he was from America. Like, don't get confused. Like, this professor was from America. He originated from America. So I don't know what his background is. I don't know what his intentions were. But it made me uncomfy. So, yeah. And the most annoying part afterwards is when I was like, guys, like, is no one gonna talk about this? You know, they were all white, so no one cared, basically. That's basically what happened. And you can get upset if you want, but that's just the truth. That's literally what happened. That's how it be. And this applies to basically everyone who doesn't look Asian. You're gonna get stared at. It's just gonna happen. For some people, staring is a lot more unsettling or uncomfortable. And I do have to say, in Japan, they were a lot more respectful about the staring or the photo taking. I don't remember anyone taking photos of me without my permission. Then again, I'm pretty oblivious to my external environment, so But, yeah, you're gonna get stared at. It's just gonna happen. Sometimes people have the decency to, like, look away and pretend like they weren't staring, but most of the time, like, people will just sit there and just look at you because what the heck. Like, it's a very homogenous society, at least in Japan. So, I guess they just weren't used to it. They were definitely better than in China, though, because in China, people would, like, I would straight up have just, like, strangers coming and, like, grabbing my hair, like, whisking me off for their family photos. Yeah, but that didn't happen in Japan. It was really low key. I don't know how it is for other countries, but, you know, just understand that the reality is there are racial differences in life and in the world. So it's just, and the way a culture responds to race is going to look different depending on where you are. I saved this one for last because homesickness is it's the reason why I cut my program short. I was originally supposed to be in Japan for a year, and certain circumstances happened where that just wasn't the case. I did leave after only a semester. I think it's important to also mention mental health under this umbrella term of homesickness too, because if you struggle with, like, anxiety, depression, or any type of mental illness, mental disorder, your homesickness isn't going to look anything like neurotypical Nancy's homesickness. Okay? It's just not going to happen. If you are prone to anxiety or prone to depression, it might take you a bit longer or a bit more support in order to get through those bouts of homesickness. And when homesickness hits, it's not just like oh, I want to be home. It's like you start craving for things you didn't even realize you could crave, right? Or, you know, if you miss your family members or you miss your friends, depending on where you are, you could be in a completely different time zone. It could be really hard to coordinate those kinds of conversations. Or, you know, if you're in a new place with people you just met, you might not be able to get that kind of, like, intimate conversation, right, with your new program members, your new roommates, or whatever, or your new friends, especially if there's a language barrier. You might not be able to have those kind of intimate, deep discussions that you would be able to have with people back home or people who share your native language. Homesickness, it's really difficult to deal with, and it can get out of hand. And they usually say that it passes after, like, a bit of time, and that's definitely true. Like, my homesickness wasn't there forever, but when it was there, it sucked, and it hurt, and it just kind of took the glamour off of everything. you know, like if you usually eat a certain comfort food because you're feeling upset, or you usually go do a certain activity, like, you know, to get your mind off of things, you just might not be able to do that. You know, they could not serve that particular food, or that particular activity might not be available where you are. So just keep that in mind. And it's really difficult too if there's something going on back home. For example, if you have ill family members, or you know, your parents are going through some sort of like legal conflict, or there's something going on with your animal or your dog at home. Like, it's important to understand you can't always just pack up your life and go back home for a weekend or for a couple of days and then return to the program. You might not have the money to just spend like thousands of dollars on a plane ticket to like go back home and then come back to your program. And if you're dealing with those anxieties or those frustrations back home, it can take you out of the present moment of where you are. It really can. It could be really surprising when it happens. You know, you could be like, oh wow, I'm really thinking about this. And then you're more like, well, what if this is the last time I get to see X? What if this is the last time I get to do that? So before you go on your program, make sure you say your goodbyes, make sure you spend quality time with the people you care about, or really have those conversations with the people you care about, because you don't know. That could be the last time you get to see them. It could. That sounds really pessimistic, but this is the dark side of studying abroad. So I'm sorry if this isn't all sunshine and butterflies, that before you leave on your trip, that could be the last time you see someone. So really, you know, take advantage of that. Remember to stay grateful. And remember to keep in contact. Like, it's easy to get lost and be like, oh, you know, wow, I'm living my life like amazingly. I'm doing all these cool traveling things. Aha. But you will potentially, or almost definitely, miss out on like cool inside jokes with your friend group back at home. You can miss out on like defining events for people you care about. And that's the reality of it. Not everyone finishes their program, or not everyone ends with their program being the best time of their life. It could just be a trip. It could be an okay experience. And if you don't complete your program, you could deal with feelings of failure. Like, you could be potentially disappointed in yourself, because it is a difficult thing to do in a lot of ways. It really is difficult. And the important thing is to remain compassionate, right? Understand that there's nothing wrong with trying new things. There's nothing wrong with maybe not being able to finish something the way you wanted to, or for a trip to not go the way you wanted to. Just make sure you go in with low expectations. Make sure that you are, you know, journaling or doing whatever it takes to like really capture the most out of your program. Like, take photos, all that stuff. Because once you leave, you're not gonna get that same exact experience again. Like, you're not. And it's okay if things don't go as planned. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with you. It's important to keep an open mind about that, or to understand that there are a number of different ways that your study abroad could go. Don't get me wrong, I'm extremely grateful that I got this opportunity, especially before certain pandemics came into play. But if I'm being completely honest, going to Japan wasn't the best time of my life. It wasn't. It was definitely a unique time. It was definitely an interesting time. It was definitely a time that I value, but it wasn't the best time of my life. There were as many positives as there were negatives to going, and it was really nice to get more clarity on, you know, my future and my future plans, or certain aspects of like my identity. That was really nice. But that could be a potential dark side, that studying abroad just won't be the time of your life, and that's okay. You know, it's not a waste of money. You learned something, and that's something money could never pay for. Like, the feeling of independence that you get, the feeling of confidence or self-assurance, right? I would argue that I didn't truly feel like an adult until I finished, you know, my programs in China and in Japan. You know, I was 20 when I first started doing this international travel thing, and by the end, when I came back, I was like, I had just turned 21, and that's the first time I was really like, wow, I'm an adult now, you know? So there's a lot you can get out of studying abroad, and not everything has to be positive in order for it to be worth it. But that's all for today's video. Thank you for watching. I upload videos every Friday, so make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that button, or leave me a comment. I'll see you next time. Here's some other minor dark sides that are Japan specific. Well, at least they're my dark sides, my cons. They don't actually have spicy food. Like, spicy food in Japan isn't actually spicy, and you realize that they don't use a whole lot of spices in general. And if you're a spicy food lover, it's kind of a bummer. Oh my god, there are mountains everywhere. Like, your calves will be so worked out, so toned by the time you return. And you know, that I'm sure that's not a con for anyone who has good stamina, but like, I don't have good stamina, so that was a bit of a con. Like, oh my god. The portions are so small. They bought like a large pizza at my dance club, and when it got there, I was like, these are too smalls, so be sure understand that portion sizes are something different. Oh, a dark side. When you leave, you're gonna miss some of the food that you can only get in that place. Like, yo, Japanese sweets, so good. I think that's all.